Welcome to StaffBuffalo's Pain Points podcast, where we unravel the complexities of staffing, human resources, and other challenges faced by businesses today.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Case.
Hi, I'm Sheri Corto.
And we are talent acquisition specialists at StaffBuffalo, and our job is to go into companies that are struggling with employment and staffing and look at their whole processes. We look at how they are gaining employees, how they're onboarding them. We do a lot of the recruiting for them. Rather than headhunting, we work from the inside. Today, we wanted to talk about pain points in staffing from specifically manufacturing companies. We both have worked with manufacturing companies before, so our job today is to talk about those problems. To get us started, I'm going to ask you from your perspective, and when you've worked with companies, what is one of the major problems that you see in staffing from manufacturing?
One of the major pain points that we are seeing in today's market is especially a labor shortage. There's a lot of vacancies in the manufacturing world. We're not able to fill a lot of the roles that need to be filled. There's a lot of different shifts that need to be filled. The labor shortage is definitely something that I'm hearing a lot about.
Do you think it's heightened a labor shortage in manufacturing specifically rather than some of the other companies and industries we've worked with?
My experience since working here, I would say that manufacturing has been hit especially hard over the past few decades. Prior to this, I worked as a school counselor. I worked a lot with high school students entering the workforce, their families. A lot of industries would come in and talk to our students. I have a good gauge and a good hold on what's been going on over the past couple decades. Manufacturing specifically has been hit hard because, number one, you have that whole age group of people retiring. Traditionally, you had people that started working at 16 or 18 and they worked all the way through. They got their pensions, their retirement. They stayed in one job until they retired, and that was the way that it went. Where now the pendulum has shifted a little bit, and people, number one, are not staying in one job for their whole career. They're job hopping a little bit. They're trying to see what else is out there, what fits for them, what fits with their family. I think that's definitely something that's happening. Something else that I do think is happening is there's been cultural negative stigma put on some of these manufacturing jobs or trades or things like electricians, plumbing, HVAC, construction. I think for a long time, even back when I was in high school, there was this cultural shift of you need to go to college. And I don't think it was ill-intentioned. I think parents wanted better for their children, as most parents do. And they saw that as college at that time. People really pushed their students and their children to go to college. Not as many people were entering the workforce and entering hands-on jobs like trades. And that has happened over the past decade or two. And I think we're now dealing with the ramifications and the repercussions of that shift. Those are two things that are a significant impact on the labor shortage in manufacturing specifically.
Do you think there's going to be a pendulum swing back? I hear more about put off college a couple years or really trying to push some of the other things. Is that swinging back that way a little bit?
Prior to me leaving education, I really felt the pendulum was swinging back.
Okay.
I do think there was a bigger push for students to go into the trades, into the vocations. A lot of people were seeing the issues with student loan debt. People were starting to shift back into it, and then COVID hit. Maybe the pendulum had started to swing, and then COVID kind of stopped everything in its tracks. So do I think it will continue to shift? I hope so. Even though we're past COVID, we're still dealing with the repercussions of the things that happened during that time. If it's going to swing back fully, I don't know. I have some theories on it, but what are your thoughts?
I found a lot of that to be true. And following up on an earlier point of people not staying in the same job for as long, because now the average is every few years, people are leaving a job. And that can take a toll on companies because of training and losing people. I do want to point out, though, that there are some rumors or myths floating around the ether on why there's a labor shortage in manufacturing. And some of those have to do with mothers not being in the workforce as much. We know that during COVID, that did tend to affect mothers more than fathers. But talking about a pendulum swing, that has also swung back. We're now at kind of an all-time high for mothers being in the workforce and women working. I do want to point out that that's not really as much of an issue for labor shortage as some people are making it out to be. And it's much more likely that it's coming from people not staying in work, or, as you're saying, this push to college rather than the trades.
Overall, women are always underrepresented in the manufacturing realm as it is. I'd love the data on that because I would love to see the percentage of women in the manufacturing realm prior to the pandemic versus after, because I do know through some of the research I've done that right now we're at an all-time high of women in the workplace overall. I would love to be able to look at that data and see where that goes.
That'd be interesting. Another slightly transitioning, a major pain point in employment has to do with the fact that a lot of manufacturing companies use temps. And we've touched on how complicated it is when you have people constantly coming and going from your employment, when you need to train people, you need a cohesive team. And we've worked with companies where they mainly staff the people on the floor using work. And it's frequently just an expensive mess, quite frankly.
If that is your go-to and your main source of recruiting, it can definitely be problematic. It can also cost you a lot more than maybe people are realizing.
Yes. Just this morning, I was interviewing someone who was leaving a job because most of his coworkers are temps. And he's been there for years. And he says it's impossible to build rapport with your coworkers. You're constantly having to pick up slack because the people around you, they aren't coming into work planning on being there long term. They don't have company loyalty, and they frequently don't know how to do their job very well. And then as soon as they're trained, they leave.
And that could be based on the new hire, the candidate. It could be based on lots of different factors. Their experience as a temp, not to say that all temps are going to come in and do a bad job, or they're not going to be disloyal or anything like that. If you know that your job is temporary, it might just have a different mindset than somebody that's planning on being there for 5 or 10 years. Additionally, when the people who are there longer have to continually train over and over and over again, it also reduces the productivity of that person. Or that person, that employee could be doing more things, moving up the chain, doing cross-training, learning new roles, upskilling themselves. A lot of their time is spent training new employees, and that can be monotonous and redundant to that employee as well and lead to their overall less job satisfaction. Exactly. That's definitely something that happens with temps when you're hiring over and over again.
And we've worked with some companies to help get them away from temp work. And overall, they tend to hire to keep them permanently. The staff that are brought in need to be there. And it tends to just work better.
Overall, people want a stable environment. Companies want stable employees. The employees want a stable job, a steady paycheck. They want to know that they are in a stable place. They're not going to lose their job, that they're not going to have to look for something else in 3 to 6 months. Hiring permanent long-term employees is obviously going to be the goal on both sides of that.
For sure. Last pain point I want to touch on before we talk solutions, and that there's hope in the world, is and this applies to many different industries, but AI, huge in every single industry, and manufacturing is not exempt from that.
Not
and
at all.
That terrifies everyone from your regular staff people on the ground to your CEOs.
Think about the car industry. The car industry alone has so many new robotic things. There's a lot of AI involved.
Everything is automated.
I mean, I read something the other day that an oil rig has something like 80,000 sensors on it. That's the way that things are shifting. In manufacturing, it goes hand in hand with that as well. Everything from production lines, assembly lines, quality control, quality inspections, all of that is going to start to be automated in some way, shape, or form. It seems daunting and may seem a little overwhelming for some of these manufacturers, especially because the initial investment may be pretty high when talking about automating all of their machinery and retraining their employees. And that goes back again to not hiring temps all the time, because you want to be reskilling and upskilling, retraining your employees that you have to be learning these new things as you're going along. And that is going to save you in the long run financially as well. But there's a lot of automation that will be taking place in the manufacturing industry coming up in this, at least in this decade.
But obviously there's hope, right? Like, companies aren't just stuck having employment issues. When we come to these companies, we normally identify all the pain points we've just talked about, because some companies will have some of those and not others. When we've come in, we'll look at their job descriptions. Are they actually talking about what equipment their staff need to use? Are they talking about what kind of departments they're going to be in? Is it just too general? Maybe they're getting the wrong people. We look at, where are you trying to find people, right? You frequently have to go to where those people already are. They're not always going to come to you. You need to know what job boards to be posting your jobs on. LinkedIn is not the place to necessarily be posting a lot of these manufacturing jobs at a certain level. If you work for a manufacturing company, you need to be an expert in manufacturing. You need to know where those people are. It's how to figure out where they are. And then just doing that interview process with a group of people that it's not like interviewing HR professionals. It's a different set of questions.
It is.
You might be focusing more on calling than email. It's figuring out how to communicate.
Correct.
And the right kind of language to use and how to figure out they have the experience that you want. So it's all about how do you post your job? Where do you post? And how do you communicate what you actually need? And you're not being just too general. You need to find the right people. So how do you find the people?
Right.
So once you've identified them and found them, then it turns into, okay, how do you keep them? Because we've talked about people leaving jobs all the time. Can you jump in with how have you found when you meet with clients, how do you teach them how to keep their staff?
A lot of it goes back to what you were touching on about how are you finding the right people? Because even before you keep the right people, you need to ensure that you're finding the right people. And that goes back to what we do. Just recently, we had a lot of jobs posted for a client and it just wasn't getting traction. We weren't getting anybody. Couldn't understand why. It's just one of those things that we really needed to revamp how we were writing it. We needed to revamp some of the words we were using. Are we using the right verbiage? And then finding the different pockets of community that these people are a part of, whether it be different types of memberships or people that they know or friends or family, but really tapping into some of those connections and those communities to find the right people. And then after that, in terms of retaining employees, it's a pretty basic process, and there's a lot of things that we might just need to refresh on. Things like making sure that it's a good working conditions. Are they good working environments? Are your lights good? Is it a well-lit place? Are there windows? And not every place can have windows, especially warehouses and manufacturing and things. But if you can do things to make things brighter or lighter, people are more willing to be a little happier there.
Yes.
And then on the job training, we kind of touched on the training that employees are asked to do for other employees. There's a lot of that on the job training that is great, and that goes hand in hand with mentorship. Having mentors in the building that can be a source of ease for a new employee. If they have a question and they don't want to go to the boss or they don't want to go to HR, who can they ask? Who can they rely on for good information? Mentorship programs are really important, and I think that they are kind of overlooked in some of these manufacturing companies, so that could be looked at.
Another question that I get asked a lot is there movement up in a company? This gets back to being trained. Are they willing to put in the work, especially with AI coming in? Are you going to train your current staff so they can take on other roles? So that every person has curiosity about different parts coming into their industry. Maybe they want to move up, they want to be a supervisor or a manager. Are you willing to put the time into your employees to work with them, to mentor them so that they can move up? Because if there isn't that mobility at all, frequently they're going to leave. They're going to go someplace else where they can get more experience, where they will be mentored and they'll learn more.
That's definitely a common theme, a common thread among people that I'm interviewing. When we're interviewing, part of my role is to find out why you left your last role. Why weren't you happy there? What is going to make you happy? It's more than just punch in, punch out. You want that work-life balance. You want people to be happy and feel fulfilled at their jobs. Part of that is finding out why they left their other roles. And more often than not, what we hear is that there was no room for growth, that there was really no upward mobility. There was no room for leadership roles. And they felt that they were just stationary and stagnant, and they really wanted more. They wanted to learn, they wanted to grow, and they weren't always given those opportunities. So that's huge.
This seems like a missed opportunity for a lot of companies when we know there are these changes coming in because of AI. We know you're going to need staff that are trained in different ways or hire. You might as well just train your current staff if they are willing to learn. If they want those opportunities, the two go hand in hand.
And some of our clients have had great and really successful programs in cross-training. They might have different programs where you can learn a new job, a new skill. Honestly, that is the best thing that you can do for your employees. The employees are happy because they're learning new things. They're not bored. It's not redundant material. They're learning different things. It helps the company out because let's say somebody who works a certain machine is out on a medical leave or maternal leave for having a child, whatever it might be. You have somebody that can step into their shoes without having to now rehire, retrain, all the things that cost a business money and time and resources. Having the ability to cross-train your employees is really a win-win for everybody. It enhances their job satisfaction. It gives them more stake in the company and more longevity for sure.
Absolutely. There's no loss.
Right.
Essentially. There's no loss.
Yes.
The other sticking point for a lot of them that I want to talk about, because it really is crucial for manufacturing, is safety. Safety in the place. More than any other kind of industry, as far as I know that I've worked with, you have staff that will leave jobs because they'll say, I'm worried I was going to get hurt. I watched my coworkers get hurt. And I'm just a number to my boss. They don't care if I get hurt because it's just a little bit of disability.
A little PPE goes a long way. There's a lot of candidates that I've interviewed that have felt unsafe in previous roles, unsafe at certain companies. They felt that their safety was not taken seriously. They were asked to do things that they knew were not safe, or maybe they were asked to do things that they weren't properly trained on or certified for, and that definitely leads to decreased job satisfaction, and more importantly, it leads to people looking elsewhere.
Another way to make sure that you can actually keep your employees is to, at a very basic level, just look at your comp and benefits. Are you paying someone enough for them to have a sustainable life? If they are worried about money all the time and they're worried about their benefits, a lot of these folks have families. If you want someone to stay, they need to be able to afford to stay working for you. That's a very kind of base level. But then beyond that, you want to actually be paying them what they're worth. Have they been trained? Do they do their job really well? Are they a very skilled person? You need to be paying them enough because you need to be competitive against the other manufacturing jobs in your area.
Right. So if somebody's leaving your manufacturing job, chances are they're probably going to somewhere locally.
They're going somewhere else. Yeah.
To another manufacturing job. Correct. That's a huge point too, with inflation, with the cost of everything else going up, minimum wage going up, all of those things are increasing. The salary needs to increase as well.
You need to be competitive.
Especially as there is such a labor shortage right now, and that's only projected and trended to get even higher. So at this point, looking at salary, especially when it comes to upskilling your employees, giving them those additional trainings, talking about AI, your employees are going to have to be trained on that as well. It's really important to make sure that you're doing your market research and making sure that those salaries are competitive and are going to have your employees stay.
For sure. As a last point, I want to bring up DEI, having a diverse labor force, because that's really only going to help someone's company. So we already touched on having women in the workforce, but you're also looking at people who have disabilities, people who have been incarcerated, people who are returning from the armed services. These are all people that might not count as the typical labor force that people think of, but a lot of them are really searching for work, and they're going to be dedicated workers. You just have to think outside the box a little bit if you're going to search them out, use different job boards, be contacting different service providers about getting employers that way.
That's a really good point. Time and time again, we hear from different employees and different candidates that that's what they want. They want a diverse workforce that they can collaborate with. So we're seeing a lot more employee resource groups being formed. A lot of companies and HR departments are encouraging employee resource groups so that people can feel a strong sense of belonging, so that they can feel a sense of belonging to their coworkers, their colleagues, but also their company as well. And it's important for companies to have a diverse workforce so that they have different perspectives from all different backgrounds, from all different socioeconomic statuses. It's just really important to have that diversity for your coworkers, your employees, and your company alike.
So even though there are significant pain points, whether it's labor shortages or any of the other things we've discussed, specific to manufacturing, there are solutions. There are ways out. There are things you can do to hire and maintain good quality staff. You just need to have people doing that know the industry. And that's frequently where we come in.
Yes.
Because you need to understand what those problems are and the roadmap to get yourself out of those problems.
That's something that we definitely have experience in. A lot of our clients have some of those similar pain points. What I think is great about what we do is we go in and we work alongside with you internally. We work alongside your staff. We get to know your staff. We get to know different hiring managers, their management style, so that when we're interviewing people and we're looking for candidates, we're also matching up those personality types.
Huge.
So that's something that's huge. I love about what we do, whether it be manufacturing or a different industry, but specifically, I know we're talking about manufacturing today, but that's where our expertise really lies.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Pain Points.
Make sure to follow us for next time when we talk about the pain points of startups. Make sure to follow all of our social media because we post jobs and tips for both employers and job seekers. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Pain Points podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on future episodes.